Hi and welcome to my channel. Did Europe exist before 1700? Now what a question. Well, that's the title of an article written by the medieval historian Peter Burke. And Burke gives a clear answer. No, there was no Europe before 1700. Now, how's that possible? And the answer is there's a difference between Europe as a geographical term and Europe as an idea. And this is so often confused in the political discourse. Now, what is the idea of Europe? First, think of Dante Alighieri, the famous Italian poet who outlined an Europe that is centered in Italy and that excludes the Balkans, that is the predominantly Orthodox countries of Southeast Europe. Now, this idea that Europe consists of cultures that belong together evolved over time when certain Western European powers expanded over the world and came into contact with other cultures. So that around 1700, the term Europe became very popular, but Europe was mostly defined by what it was not. It was not the Ottoman Empire, it was not India, it was not Brazil. So the question is, then what is Europe actually? When I was looking for a subject for my MA thesis in Middle Eastern Studies around 20 years ago, I came across these wonderful, intellectually really stimulating writings by Arab and Turkish reformist intellectuals in the 19th, early 20th century who spoke so often of Europe and wanted their own country to be part of Europe or to be part of a shared civilization that is based on the Greco-Roman culture. When in 1869 the Suez Canal was opened and Egypt's ruler Ismail declared, "My country is no longer in Africa, it is in Europe," then this reflects the spirit of that time. The most important Egyptian intellectual of the first half of the 20th century, Taha Hussein, he wrote many articles and treatises on the idea of a shared civilization, on the idea of an Egypt that is culturally closer to European countries than to Oriental countries. Because of this, he found it bewildering that his own compatriots all the time spoke of themselves as being Orientals, although he argued Egypt is culturally much more akin to European countries such as Greece, Italy, or France than it is to India, China, or Japan. In the same vein, you find a renowned Turkish writer, the father of Turkish nationalism, he called. His name is Ziya Gökalp, who in the 1920s published his influential book Türkçülüğün Esasları, The Principles of Turkism, in which he outlines a future Turkey that is part of Europe. And the role model, and that's the interesting thing, the role model for him was Japan, who in his mind was a European country because it has adopted major European achievements. That is a constitution, that is technology, that is a modern education system, and so on and so on. And in the same way, he wanted his own country, Turkey, to become part of Europe. And you might think that the Greeks, as successors of the ancient Greeks, they are fervent Europeans and they saw themselves as being at at the heart of the European idea, but that's wrong. In 19th century Greece, you find a nationalist elite that didn't want their own country to be part of Europe. Europe, that was the West, and they wanted Greece to be part of the Orient. They spoke of an Oriental ideal, Anatoliako Idaniko, that Greece should follow, meaning the future Greece should be a country that is culturally more located in the Orient with a bridge into Europe, but a country that is actually more Oriental than European. Nowadays, historians speak of phantom borders, which separate different mentalities. The most important phantom border is the separation of the Roman Empire in the 4th century, which in Southeast Europe coincides with the borders between the Habsburg Empire and the Ottomans. This fact is often obscured by our usage of the term Europe, because too often we assume that what is true for the west of the continent must also somehow be true for the center and the east of the continent. But in fact, look at polls, at surveys done, for example, by the Pew Research Center. You find that in general, even today, there's a huge difference between the Western European countries on the one hand and the Central and Eastern European countries on the other hand. We find that Western European countries usually tend to be more individualistic and less nationalistic than Central and Eastern European countries. We find in Western European countries usually a greater tolerance towards minorities, especially Muslims and Jews, than in Eastern and Central European countries. And also we find usually a greater tolerance towards homosexuality than it is in Central and Eastern European countries. Whatever the European idea is, it has mainly to do with the western parts of the continent. So my conclusion here is we should be very careful when we use the term Europe in the political discourse. The term Europe is too often invoked when the world seems to be in turmoil and the political arena seems to be ready for big ideas, but the term itself, although being very fashionable, is generally more misleading than helpful. Now let's wrap it up here. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of Europe, what you think of the idea of Europe, what the idea of Europe means for you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you find this channel promising, then don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon.